What's going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another edition of Giants Collective. That is the shortest intro in the business. Happy hump day to everybody out there. Hope you're all having a great week so far. As always, I'm joined by Adriana, Anthony, and the Entertainer. Giants Collective, of course, is brought to us by our good friends at BetUS. Thank them for powering the stream. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. If you could leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, that'd be great. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on TikTok and Instagram. Follow us over there on those platforms as well. If you want to become a member, of course, all you got to do is click that join button. You get the cool emojis, you get the monthly member messages, you get your name in the outro and all that good stuff. So appreciate you being here. Minicamp did start today. And I saw a question in the chat. So I want to get right to the question in the chat because Christopher Tony said, how is Neal progressing? So from what I read, Evan Neal has embraced his move to guard, and he has actually looked okay. And obviously he's got a lot of work to do, but the Giants could definitely use him there. We could definitely use some depth on the line. And I always go back to this, and Chris can vouch for this. Years ago, Eric Flowers, you know how much of a disaster he was at left tackle. He was terrible, and they didn't really do anything with him. And we kept screaming for them to move him to guard, try him at guard. I mean, the guy was a 9th overall pick. Give him a try. At least see if he can play there. And if you can't, then you cut ties. And they never did that. They never looked at that option. Giants are looking at that option with Evan Neal. Adriana, how big of an impact can Evan Neal have if he can just be an average guard to give us some depth on an offensive line?
It would be huge. I think the biggest benefit for him is that he doesn't have the pressure of having to be a starter. And I think for all of us too, there's a big relief there that we don't have to worry if, God forbid, someone goes down, that if him going in at tackle, the season's over. So I'm relieved about that. I think it's a really good motivating factor for him too, that if he plays good enough, he's going to have the opportunity to get a second contract with the Giants, get a contract somewhere else, and, kind of prove that, look, maybe he just had a rough couple years. The injuries didn't help him. And, whatever the issue was, I think that this is a really good situation for him to be in because he doesn't have that pressure to start. So I hope it works out for him. I think the best case scenario is that he proves that he's worthy of being the starter for the Giants for the future, whether it's left or right guard, because between Greg Van Roten and John Runyon, neither one of them are on long-term deals. So if he can end up being that guy for the Giants, that would be amazing. So I hope it works for him. And I'm glad that, the transition has been smooth. Carmen Brasillo has, been helpful to him. And I don't think we've heard from him yet, but I think he's going to speak maybe during camp. So I'm excited to see what he has to say. But look, I know so many of us were so excited about Evan Neal only to be let down for a really long time. So I hope that he can instill some confidence in himself and all of us this year.
Yeah, that would be awesome if we get anything out of him. Anthony, you think he can be a contributor at any facet of the offensive line, whether it is a spot start or just for depth purposes or whatever? You think that he can take a step forward at that position?
Yeah, I definitely think he can take a step forward at guard. I think last year, in some ways, he did take a step forward. He wasn't great by any means, but I thought that he actually did play better when he did play last season. He didn't play a whole ton, and obviously he started out the season as a healthy scratch, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that he missed time due to an injury during the summer. But he had a few decent games down the stretch at right tackle, and one of the things that the Giants did last season, they constantly had a tight end over his right shoulder. So it was almost as if he was blocking with a tackle over him. Obviously, it was a tight end, but kind of playing more guard than tackle for the majority of his reps out there, which I think was their way of easing him into this transition. So everybody kind of complained that this transition didn't happen sooner. I think in some ways they started to get it going last year while he was playing right tackle by always having a tight end over him. I don't think it was just for chipping purposes because that it wasn't really a chip and release tight end. It was a tight end staying home to block alongside him. So I kind of viewed it as them beginning that transition last year. And so I think that he's been working diligently, as Dable said. Kafka gave him a lot of praise recently as well. And the reporters have said that he's been first guy in, last guy out kind of player. So if that's the case, if his work ethic has improved and if he's really trying to make a run at the guard spot, man, I'm supporting him. I'm all for it. I would really love to see the Giants get some sort of a return on this investment. And even if he just starts 5 games for us, but isn't terrible in those 5 games, that's a mission success for me. So I just want to see some sort of progress from him.
Chris, what do you think Evan Neal can give us? You think he can give us anything, or do you think?
Yeah, I actually do. He's never going to live up to that draft pick. We all know that. That's a complete bust. You got to be a top end tackle to live up to the. I think he was the seventh overall pick. Kayvon was fifth in that draft, but he's never going to live up to that pick. But I do think, and I don't know if he will. We're going to find out. But I do think he could become a solid guard in the NFL. I think he's always been a pretty good run blocker at the right tackle. So the question has always been the pass blocking, and I think he is so slow getting off the snap that the edge has just been able to rush. That's been, at least I don't claim to be this incredible, film analyst, but when I watch the Giants games, I just feel like his break off the line of scrimmage is so slow that he has been tarnished because of that at the right tackle spot. I think at the guard, I do think he could be relatively successful. And Eric Flowers is a great example. He was a horrible tackle, ended up being a really good guard for a year or two after he left the New York Giants. We've seen other examples of this in the past as well. So, yeah, I don't know if he's going to start the year. I'm going to lean he's not at the guard spot. He's going to have an incredible camp, I think, for that to happen. But I think if he gets the opportunity this year, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a solid guard. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think he could be a solid guard. And at this point, sadly, I'd be happy with that. Obviously, we didn't have those aspirations after the Giants drafted him 3 years ago. But where we are now, if he's an average guard in the NFL, I'd be happy with that. And I think he's capable of it.
No question. I mean, if he gives us anything on the offensive line, that's not a train wreck, because that's what he was. He was just hurting the team. I mean, if he can do anything, and obviously, like you mentioned, there's less pressure at guard. You got some help on either side of you. You're not out there on an island. I definitely think, and just to hear that he's embraced it, I like to hear that players understand. I'm glad that he doesn't look at this as like you're demoted, you're on the bench. It's just like, you know what, this isn't working out over here. Let's give you another position. Let's see if you can contribute this way. I'm glad that they didn't give up on him completely, because again, when you're a seventh overall pick, there has to be some sort of talent there. It just hasn't worked out. This isn't the first time that we've drafted a bust, and it's not the first time we've seen linemen be really high in the draft and end up being busts as well. But if you can get any value out of Evan Neal, I think that's a positive for the New York Giants, especially if you have some depth on the offensive line, because Lord knows we need depth everywhere. And that's something I feel like Joe Shane is doing, because Anthony's mentioned this a bunch of times. And we've talked about it as a unit. That the Giants do have a lot more depth this year than they've had in previous years, and that's because of his ability to draft better players here the last couple of years and make good moves in free agency. And I do think eventually this year you're going to see this translate onto the field. Are we going to win 12 games? That's probably not going to happen, but can we win 7 or 8 games and compete with the better teams? I think that's very possible if we stay healthy. I'm looking forward to it, man. I can make myself all excited. I get all excited about freaking the Giants in June, but this is the time to do it. So hopefully we're still singing this, being optimistic and hopeful about him in November. That would be awesome. One other thing I saw. No, never mind. Marcus Bowe, they've been trying him on both tackles. I've been seeing that. Is it possible, Anthony, that he plays either tackle at any time? Is he a swing tackle? What is he? They just gonna play him all over the line? Like, what do you think they have planned for him? If anything, are they just going to try him out at each position to see where he plays best and then plug him in there?
Well, I know when he was drafted and he spoke with the media for the first time, he mentioned that he wants to, or at least has an interest in trying all 5 positions on the offensive line. He had experience at guard, he had experience at tackle, both on the right side at Purdue, but he mentioned that he's even open to playing center if need be. He just wants to fit in wherever the Giants want him. And I think that was the message he sent out, and that was the message the Giants received. And so far, I think that's their plan with him. Let's find out where he fits best. Let's just use him as an offensive lineman. Let's not look at him as a right tackle or right guard. Let's just figure out once he's on the field where he performs the best, and then we'll develop him in that position. But I also think there's a lot of value in having a guy who is comfortable playing on both sides of the line, especially this early in their career, being developed to do exactly that, play right tackle and left tackle, especially when your left tackle has missed 18 games over the last 2 years due to injuries. So I think it's important that the Giants are actually looking for options behind Andrew Thomas. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this. They invested quite a bit behind Andrew Thomas this year. They signed 2 veterans in Stone Forsythe and James Hudson III. So that's almost $10 million that they spent on backup left tackle, plus a 5th-round pick on Marcus Bowe, who they're now clearly viewing as a potential option behind Andrew Thomas. So it's kind of more than anything demonstrates to me that Andrew Thomas's injury problems are in the forefront of their mind, and they are looking for ways to navigate a season if he does go down again, because the last 2 years, as soon as he's gone down, so has the season. So I think the Giants are trying to be cognizant of that and understand that perhaps this rookie Marcus Bowe is a really good tackle. A lot of people coming out of the pre-draft process viewed him more as a guard, but if he's comfortable playing tackle and if he can make it work, it would probably be more beneficial to the Giants if he flipped over to the left side of the line, got some experience there, just in case they need to put him in if Andrew Thomas gets hurt once again this season.
Chris, what do you think their plan is with Marcus Bowe? Do you think they have a set plan, or do you think that they're just going to kind of see where he is?
I'm sure they have a plan, but their long-term plan may be completely different than their here and now plan for now. But I remember when we drafted him, there were several people that thought he'd make a better guard in the NFL than a tackle. So I wouldn't be surprised if they move him around to the guard spot. That's where I think a lot of people project he's going to be long-term for the Giants. But right now, I think it was Soyberg, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day when the Giants had those great offensive lines. He basically could play every position. I think it's incredibly valuable to have a guy that's your 6th or 7th offensive lineman that could step in and play adequate at 4 or 5 different spots on the offensive line. So if he can be that for this team and provide valuable depth, I think that's incredibly valuable. We've seen that the last couple of years for the New York Giants. The offensive line, while it wasn't good, was at least respectable with the starting 5 early on last year. Once we started to have injuries, it was awful. So we talk about the importance of depth, and I always say that is the position more so than any other where you need quality depth. And if he ends up being a really valuable backup for his entire career as a New York Giant, they could step in and play any of the 5 positions. That's a slam dunk pick in the 5th round. So I would love if of course, I'd love it if he develops into an all-pro tackle. But if he ends up being a jack of all trades offensive lineman that gives you 8, 9, 10 starts a year when somebody goes down with an injury and you don't really miss a beat, that would be really valuable. So I actually think that's really encouraging that the New York Giants are trying him out on, in all areas of the line. And who knows? We've talked about how I'm hoping and thinking JMS may take a step up this year. But if he doesn't, maybe he steps in and he's the center the following year. So I think it's important for him to just learn the ropes. And if they want to teach him all the spots and he's open to it, I think that's really valuable for the New York Giants to get a player like that.
Adriano, what do you think their plan is for Marcus Bowe? Where do you think he can contribute the best, if any?
I think the best spot for him is probably battling it out with Stone Forsythe and James Hudson for either probably the left tackle gig. I was reading Justin Pugh's responses to some people. He asked for questions on Twitter for Giants fans, and someone asked about his opinion on moving guys around on the offensive line if Thomas goes down. Like, what does he think is the best plan? And he said that he really thinks that guys should stick to their initial position, that's probably what they're best at, the position that they're playing. So I read that to assume that if, God forbid, Andrew Thomas goes down, that he would prefer to keep Illuminor at right tackle and then at left tackle put in James Hudson or Marcus Bowe. So I am on board with that. And I know there was a lot of talk about this last year that, they should just be moving Illuminor to left tackle and then putting someone in at right tackle. But I like the idea of only having to replace one person. Yes, Illuminor has played left tackle and right tackle, but I think the best case scenario and what's the least disruptive for this offensive line is Marcus Bowe and James Hudson battling out for left tackle. Keep Illuminor where he is at right tackle. Then you've got 4 of the offensive linemen that are still have that continuity, still playing in the same position. And Marcus Bowe has experience at tackle. He also has experience at guard too, but I feel like the Giants, dare I say, actually have some depth at both guard positions between the 2 starters that they have. They have Stinney, Evan Neal, Zudu. Like, they definitely have options there. So I like the idea, I think, of Bowe getting the left tackle reps, because look, the reality with Andrew Thomas is that unfortunately he is injury prone and he's going to be with the Giants throughout the remainder of his contract and probably his career, but we really need to have a solid backup in place there. And if Marcus Bowe, the best case scenario, ends up that he could be a swing tackle, and if Jermaine Illuminor doesn't get another contract with the Giants, then you can put him at right tackle, then that's great. And then you keep James Hudson, or maybe they draft a left tackle, as Andrew Thomas contract I think he's got 3 years left. So, who knows what's going to happen after that. So I like the idea. I think it would feel nice as a Giants fan to feel like if God forbid Andrew Thomas goes down, there's at least a couple options there at left tackle. And Marcus Bowe being a rookie and having that opportunity to really learn and develop into that potential starting left tackle or backup for Thomas, I think would be great.
Yeah, this is the most depth I think they've had in the line in a long time. And you shudder to think about Andrew Thomas going down because, like Chris mentioned, offensive line wasn't great at the beginning of last year, but it wasn't like putrid. But as soon as Andrew Thomas went down, it's like pulling out the bottom block of a Jenga tower. And the whole thing just collapses when you lose your anchor. You know what I mean? And you definitely don't want him to go down, but at least me, I feel – I don't want to say comfortable, but I feel like they wouldn't take as far of a step backwards without them this year because of all the depth that they have. And I think that training camp will be a lot of fun just to see how these camp battles progress. There's going to be a lot as far as the guards and tackles go. Obviously, Thomas is going to be your guy and Lunar is going to be your guy. And you would assume the Runyan's going to be your guy. But JMS, I mean, who knows? Who knows what happens? Who knows who gets the backup spot? So the camp battles are always fun. I think that even a guy like Thomas Fidone could surprise at the tight end spot. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go on. And again, I feel like it's definitely not all the way complete. There's still work to be done, but I feel like this is the most complete team that Joe Shane and Brian Dable have had to work with. So I'm just anxious to see the guys in pads, and I'm anxious to see what they do in training camp, and then obviously in the preseason and going forward. But I like the direction the team's going. I feel like there is a concise direction, and I feel like that direction is forward. And hopefully they're not too bad this year where they're like, these guys are fired and then we're starting all over again. I want them to improve. I want them to keep their jobs. I want them to keep building because we built it this far. We have a bad year and we start all over again. We're going to go right back in this crap for the next 4 or 5 years again because somebody's going to want to take it in a different direction. And I don't want to see that. So I think go ahead, Chris.
And to your point about having the best roster, I don't even think it's close. When you think about the positional groups on this team compared to the 3 previous years for the New York Giants, the running back position, obviously, you could argue was better with Saquon Barkley compared to the what we have right now, the running back by committee. The tight end, you could at least argue before Darren Waller got hurt, he was pretty productive, is better, but I do think Theo Johnson could take a step up this year. But every other positional group on this team, offensive line is at least as good as it's been. Quarterbacks as good as it's been. Wide receivers as good as it's been. Pass rush with the addition of Abdul Carter is as good as it's been. The secondary is as good as it's been. So, yeah, I think this is by far, and we have more depth than we've ever had since they've been here. I think this is by far the best roster that Joe Shane and Brian Dable have had to work with.
I feel like I say this every episode. I'm going to say it again because I don't care. How excited are you for this pass rush, man? Every time I look, all I see, like Carl Banks puts something out. I don't know if you guys follow Big Blue VCR on Twitter. They always have these old clips of the Giants from like the 80s and early 90s. And when I was growing up, and Carl Banks, like, if you want to see what guys like Brian Burns, Abdul Carter can do, and there's just a clip of them just beating the shit out of Troy Aikman. I mean, listen, they've talked about Abdul Carter. He looks unstoppable. And they're saying that he hasn't even had to do anything. It's just a speed rush. Now, granted, they're not really running into each other, but he hasn't even had to show any kind of pass rush move. I mean, it's just me. I'm an old school guy, but I mean, this freaking pass rush could be absolutely incredible.
I think on paper, it's the best pass rush we've had. And the game is not played on paper. But I think on paper, it's the best pass rush we've had since our last Super Bowl team. I think it's an even better pass rush than the 16 team when we had Olivier Vernon and was Pierre-Paul still on that team? I don't even remember. He was, right? Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, but I think it could be. I think it could easily be better than that pass rush. I think on paper, it could be the best one we've had since our last Super Bowl, which is insane.
Yeah. How good can this pass rush be, Adriana? How good can it be?
I'm really trying to temper my expectations, but I am so excited. And, I saw a clip, I think it was on Get Up or Good Morning Football, where Ryan Clark is talking about how, if he is another team's offense that they're worried about, or they should be worried about going against the Giants defensive line, that they're going to be really tough to go up against this year. And, all of the reports from the beat writers have said that between Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon, and Dexter, that they are getting to the quarterback in 2 seconds or less. And I know there's no pads and whatever, but still the speed is there. That's the biggest thing, right? The speed is there between all of those guys. And like we've all talked about, is if you think you've got 2 good tackles on your offensive line, right? We're playing the Lions, who have a really good offensive line. You've got 2 good tackles who are going to try and cover those 2 guys. But then you can bring in Abdul Carter. If you've got Kayvon and Burns on the outside, you can bring in Abdul Carter. You've got Dexter Lawrence, Chauncey Golston, who's recorded a couple sacks during practice. I just think the fact that there's depth there and there's so many options, like if you're a quarterback, you have to be worried. That's going to be the biggest thing that is really going to keep the Giants in games. And I just think that it's going to take them to the next level. And I do think it's fair for us to be excited. Like, I think so many of us are excited because we feel like the talent is there. There's obviously the question marks around Shane Bowen. But look, Shane Bowen has been in the NFL for a long time. He has a lot of experience. He's not, the worst defensive coordinator available. I think the fact that he's got some depth is really important. He's got more talent. And look, I think the pirate thing with the chest is a little corny, but it seems like it's working. Every single day at practice, there have been multiple interceptions. Dane Belton's leading the pack. Even guys like, some of the UDFAs have been recording interceptions. So I'm going to give him a little bit of credit here and say that I think that, the talent plus the depth plus him, maybe stepping outside of the box or feeling like he's confident enough in year 2 to maybe try some different things. I feel like we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think it's fair to be concerned about him because last year was obviously awful. But, before it got really bad, they were leading the NFL for 8 or 9 weeks in sacks.
Yeah.
And that's before Abdul Carter, before Chauncey Golston. So I think it's fair for us to be optimistic and say, on paper, this is going to be really good. But I also think it's fair to say it's really possible that that's going to translate because we did see a little bit of it last year. And now this year, we've got more talent, especially in the secondary, which is also going to help. So I don't know. I'm not going to say, and I think we talked about this, about the breaking the rookie sack record of Abdul Carter. I'm not going to say that they think he's going to break it, but I do think, and we talked about this too, that between the defensive line, that they're going to have well over 40 sacks. And, I think that's kind of fair. Like the schedule's tough, but
I'm going to say it. Call it a hot take. I'm confident if he's healthy, he's breaking the rookie sack record. I think Abdul Carter is going to have a big year for the New York Giants. Big year.
He has the best odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year at plus 250 from what I saw. So we're not the only ones who blindly.
No, that was a graphic.
So that makes me feel good.
Yeah, that was a graphic we had a couple of weeks ago. Was the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Anthony, how good can I listen? I'm on record. A hot take: Giants are leading the league in sacks this year. That was my hot take. I mean, of course, it's June, so I jump right off the cliff. But Anthony, how good can the pass rush be if they stay healthy? Is it going to be the best one you've seen in your lifetime? Put it that way. You're a young guy. Do you think this will be the best pass rush you've seen in your lifetime as a Giants fan?
No, I do.
Okay.
I do remember 2008 and 2012, so I can't say that. But I think 50-plus sacks is quite achievable for this defensive line. I think you said it. Health is everything for them. And, Dexter Lawrence last year was on pace for a career year. I mean, he had 9 sacks, which was a career high. He could have easily gone for double digits, but then he got hurt. So it's really just going to come down to health. But even on that note, and Thibodeau missed time last year. He only played in 12 games. But even on that note, there's just more depth on this defensive line now. There's more talent, even going to Darius Alexander from the 3rd-round pick, even going Elijah Chapman played well this spring, and he showed some flashes last year. I just think there's more depth all over the place on this defensive line, and that's going to make a world of a difference. But I think the big takeaway for me with Abdul Carter at OTAs and minicamp, of course, no pads, no physicality, low-intensity practices, sure, but he's just destroying everybody with pure speed in a way that nobody else is. And we had a bunch of comments on Fireside Giants yesterday that were saying, you need more than just speed. You need more than just speed. And I'm like, yes, but he has speed that nobody else has. And now he has NFL coaching. He's barely ever played edge rusher. He's been a linebacker. So he's already this good just based on his pure, raw physical talent. Now he's going to be coached to do the other things, to learn how to add a pass rushing move to his repertoire. So just think about how good he truly can be. I think Giants fans had like a backwards perspective on it from what I did. I'm like, yeah, he's so good without any pass rush moves. Now wait for him to get one or two of them. He's going to be unstoppable.
It's like Josh Allen.
Really,
obviously different positions,
Sure.
but it's like Josh Allen. He is physically gifted like Josh Allen was. Let him learn and grow. Sit behind it. Well, not sit. Play next to or alongside a guy like Brian Burns, who's been in the league for a while. Let him show him the ropes. He's only going to get that much better. But there's certain players that just when you watch them, and Bad Dog, we watched the game together when they played Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
He just popped off the screen. Like every play I couldn't help, and I went into that game more so interested in Drew Eiler, if I'm being honest, because I wanted to look at the quarterback. I wanted because he may have been coming out. We all thought that the Giants could be taking a quarter. I couldn't take my eyes off of him the entire game. And he's just one of those players, like Anthony said, he just pops. He has those physical attributes. His spin move is insane. And let him develop a little bit more. And I think the sky's the limit, man. I said long before the draft, I thought he was the best player in the draft. I wasn't kidding. I think he's going to be one of the top 4 or 5 edge rushers in the entire sport. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up being that within the next couple of years. I think he's that talented.
Like you said, especially with the guys next to him. It's not like he's going to be in here and he's going to be the only one where they can just, key on him, because you have all pros at other positions on defense. You have a hell of a pass rush. And, Bobby Okereke is a really good linebacker. Mike McFadden, in my opinion, is a good linebacker. And then when you add the more depth in the secondary and it just being a more solid unit where maybe the quarterback has to hold on to the ball for a quarter of a second longer or a tenth of a second longer either. That's all it takes for these guys to get there. Where is it coming from? I mean, that's the whole thing. You're going to have to double text. You're going to double Burns. I mean, what are you going to do with these guys? Some of these guys are going to get one-on-ones. Yeah. And if you can move Abdul Carter all over the field, it's going to be very difficult to, pick him out. So, I mean, like you said, the sky's the limit, and that's my hot take. I think the Giants are going to lead the league in sacks. I really do, and it's perfect for Shane Bowen because you don't blitz. You should not have to blitz with this pass rush. They should be able to get there with 4 guys, and it's something we haven't been able to do is get off the field a lot of times on third down, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Guys are converting easily. It shouldn't be as easy now. We should have some guys that can finish off the quarterback, get him down, sack him, force turnovers. I'm excited about the pass rush, man. It's been a long time. I've looked at the Giants and go, man, this defense is sick. Yeah. This defense can be really good. And if the defense is really good, we're going to be a lot better football team because the old adage is defense wins championships. And I'm not saying we're going to win a championship, but defense is going to win some games for us this year. I don't think there's any question about it. Christian says, any update on Hyatt's injury? I just looked. I didn't hear anything about it. It's just a leg injury from what I understand. Adriana mentioned it before the stream. They were just stretching out his leg. He talked to Dable. He went back into the locker room or the clubhouse or whatever they call it. You guys hear anything extra besides that? I didn't see any updates on it.
Yeah, Adriana was the first one that told me, so I'll let her speak on it.
Yeah, the only thing that I had seen basically was that he walked off the practice field with a trainer, then talked to Dable, and then went into, I guess, the treatment facility and didn't come back out. And that was yesterday. So it sounds like he didn't practice today. There's speculation that it could be a hamstring, but that hasn't been confirmed by anyone yet. So it could be any type of leg injury. But now that minicamp, I think, is complete, I don't think we're going to hear anything about it until training camp. So the good news is that he's got about 4 weeks to rehab it, whatever the injury or issue is, and hope by the time July 22nd comes around that there is nothing wrong anymore.
Do you guys feel like it might? I mean, Russ is definitely, Hyatt's look good in the OTAs. He looked really good. And obviously Russ has had glowing things to say about him. He looks a lot better. He looks a lot more confident. We saw him, put on some weight. Do you think it hampers him at all if he has to miss time with the hamstring? Do you think that sets him back at all? Or you think he can pick up right where he left off? Anyone, you can take that one.
I mean, I think it's important for Hyatt and he's got to take the necessary time to make sure he's ready to go for camp. But I think this is a huge camp for Jalin Hyatt. I think there's a lot of competition in the back end of that wide receiver room now with some of the additions that we've made. I think he's going to make the roster, especially with the reports we heard at OTAs. And I think him and Russ had a private workout, if I'm not mistaken. So he clearly likes him. So I'm strongly leaning he's going to be a Giant. But I think this is a very important camp for Jalin Hyatt. And he better hope he's 100% a go by July 22nd, because I think there's going to be a lot of competition for reps in the back end of that wide receiving group. And he's going to be fighting for that wide receiver 4 spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope that it's just something minor so he can come back, because, he was building some good momentum at OTAs. Him and Russ seem to have forged this great relationship. And, when you're fighting for a roster spot, every day and every rep matters. So, the Giants are going to have to start making their cuts after training camp. I do think he's going to, at the very least, make it through the preseason, but, he's going to have to continue to prove himself, and training camp is a really valuable time for every player on the roster. And for someone like him who is really in a prove-it year and was finally starting to get some of that momentum, I'm sure it's disappointing that he seemed to have this setback. But Gerald wrote in the chat that Paul Tatino said on an off stream last night that Hyatt is just fine. So if that is the case and he's okay, then I expect to see him quite a bit throughout camp and taking advantage of the reps that he gets, whether it's, with any of the quarterbacks. He has to be someone to take advantage of it. And what I will say, that everything I've seen and heard about him, it seems like he's kind of reframed his attitude. He's got a new lease on this year and he's ready to work hard and prove it. So I think the confidence is there. It's just about execution at this point, and camp is going to be a really good opportunity for him to prove that.
By the way, if you guys are enjoying the show, make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe. We're like 10 away from 5K, which is awesome. So thank you for the continued support. That's pretty amazing considering it's June. So 10 away. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Just a quick note too, Friday is going to be our last show until training camp starts, because, it's kind of going to be a dead time there in between, the mini camp and the training camp. So Friday will be our last show until July. Big shout out to BetUS. As always, they're sponsoring the stream. Go to BetUS, enter the promo code YouTube150. You get a 150% match deposit bonus. You get great customer service. It's 24/7, 365. The fastest payouts in the business within 24 hours. And you get 10% gambler's insurance against all your net losses as long as you stay active every 6 months. Terms and conditions apply. And when you gamble, we ask that you do it responsibly. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. So what did the graphics team come up with for us today? Well, they came up with this. So Tommy DeVito and Jackson Dart are going on. They're talking about going on Love Island together.
Bad dog. We don't get any odds with this. I
know, where are the odds? So I mean, let's say okay. So I threw that in there. I do have another graphic, but really quick, Anthony, who wins if they both go on Love Island? This isn't fair. We're all Italian. We know who wins. I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm not even asked the question. We know the Italian wins. We're all Italian. That's the way it goes. Let me give you the real. We have had this one before, but the Giants wins after their first 5 games. So we talked about this. I want to say it was a couple weeks ago, and I was super encouraged that 3 wins was only plus 300, because that would mean they were 3-2 after 5 games. And I think if we were 3-2 after 5 games, that would be pretty awesome. And I'm also pretty stoked by the fact that 0 wins and 4 wins are almost the same odds. So you would think us going 4-1 are pretty long. And obviously the bettors think that us winning 0 after 5 games are also pretty long. So I think that people are going to catch on. That the Giants are going to be better than a lot of people think this year. And I'm definitely looking forward to some good Giants football. Think about how awesome this stream will be when, the show will be when we're, 5-2. I mean, it would be nice. But, yep, go over there. Check out BetUS. Big shout out to them for sponsoring the stream. I thought I just got rid of that. I didn't. I got rid of the other one. Now I'll get rid of that one.
What is Love Island, by the way? I've seen people talk. Is that like a reality show or something?
I don't know. I just like that they popped it up in the chat. And I like that.
I think it's
Um,
like a dating show, probably, right? Something
he
like that.
probably is, yes.
Yeah.
Really quick before we get to the super chats, I wanted to mention this, Anthony, because I talked about this. So I'm pretty sure you might have even put something on Twitter or Instagram about them going bowling. Did you do that, or maybe that was somebody else?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Number one, I feel like this is a good thing for those guys because it kind of gets in the bond. They have a good time. They get away from it all, and it's just fun. Now I don't know if they did it before, but I know that in 2007, Tom Coughlin took them bowling.
Yes.
Okay, they went to Dell Lanes, which I know very well. Anthony, do you think this is how much do you think this helps the team's camaraderie to go? But none. By the way, those guys only work on their game. I can help. You follow me on Twitter. I put a shot up there today. You can see what I do. I mean, I'm a bowler. Let's just face it. Anthony, how much does this help a team's camaraderie to go out and have a good time like that?
I think it's a good thing. I don't know how much it helps, but I think the frequency of hangouts that there's been seems a little bit higher this year. Like, for example, the bowling thing, but also Russell Wilson went out to dinner with all of the wide receivers and running backs.
And offensive linemen were there too.
Yeah, so the offensive linemen were there too. I didn't even realize that. And then I know all of the rookies went together to a Yankees baseball game. So, like, there's been a lot of hanging out and getting to know each other outside of the organization, outside of the facilities. And I wonder if maybe the coaching staff or the front office is like, let's do more of that. Maybe they're pushing it for the players and encouraging them to do that, because I do think it is important. And I think that, in recent seasons, we've seen some instances of this, but it hasn't been as public. And I don't think that it's been anything where the entire team was involved like bowling this time around. So I think it's a pretty cool thing for the Giants to implement this year. I think the camaraderie is crucial. At the end of the day, it is a sport and it is a team sport, and teams, you have to have chemistry, and chemistry is not just how well you throw and catch a ball together, but it has a lot to do with your ability to communicate and your ability to respect one another and be friendly with one another. So I think it's all good things, and I'm excited for hopefully more instances of this where we get glimpses of the players hanging out together, especially with the coaches as well, because I think that's a really important aspect of this.
Yeah. As bowlers, they're really good football players. Chris, what do you think? How important?
I mean, it's nice that they're building some camaraderie. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna result in more wins than losses. I remember during COVID, I think it was Pat Leonard, my favorite beat writer for the New York Giants, wrote a hit piece on Saquon Barkley because he was out with the team, going out to bars while he had COVID. So the team got together. And went
was that his knee? Was that his knee?
Yeah, it was his knee. Yeah, he was on like a scooter or something like that. Yeah. They had good relationships on that team too when they were winning. So I'm not poo-pooing it, but I'm also not going to say that it's going to result in a ton more wins because they're going out bowling. But it's not bad. It's certainly good that they're getting along, building camaraderie. And you brought up the fact that Coughlin brought him out for bowling in 2007. Do you remember what Coughlin did in 2011? He brought him out for spa days. Yeah, he did. So it was interesting how Coughlin developed over the course of his tenure with the New York Giants.
I mean, Adriana, how important? Because maybe I missed it. Maybe Chris is right. Maybe they've done stuff like this under Brian Daboll, and it just hasn't been as public. But I mean, it seems like they're having more fun. It even seems like Daboll is like looser.
Yes,
this year.
That I agree with. Yeah,
so how important is that? Because we saw, Coughlin had the same thing where he was kind of very militant, and you could see he was in his players' face, and they did win games. I mean, they went to the playoffs before they won the Super Bowl 2 of his first 3 years there. They didn't have a really good 2004, but they started off good. And then obviously 2005, they won the division. 2006, they made the playoffs. 2007, we all know what happened. So how much does this help to let Brian Daboll, kind of let his hair down? He's got the same haircut I do, but you know what I'm saying? Metaphorically speaking, what do you think?
I think it's great. I think what's so important about it is these guys spend so much time together. They eat, sleep, breathe. Like when they're at the facility, they're there all day. It's like coworkers, but to an extreme. So I think why it's so important is that you really get to know these guys as players, but also as people off the field. And we heard this a little bit, at Tommy DeVito saying that, the quarterback room is some of the guys have wives and children. And then it's like him and Jackson Dart talking about, watching Love Island. So I think connecting with them on a different level is also going to give you not only a different type of respect for them as a player, but also the feeling of like, we are a team. This is my guy and I have his back, right? It's like if you have really good coworkers and they come to you with some help, you're going to be like, I like this person, so I'm going to be willing to help them a little bit more than someone who's an asshole and like doesn't respond to my emails. So I think building that type of rapport is really important. And something that I also thought was interesting was that Javon Holland and Bobby O went to Stanford together. So they're being reunited. And he was asked about, what it's like being reunited with him and whatnot. And he said, it's great. Bobby and I spend a lot of time together. We've been going back and forth to each other's houses, and sometimes we're just having dinner and sometimes we're watching film. So all of these things, they all sound great in theory, but I do really think it's important that they're building that type of relationship where it's like I said, I got your back, and it's like that stupid thing with the fight on the field. Like I don't really want to see fights because I don't want to worry about anyone getting injured, but I appreciate that you've got another offensive lineman and another edge rusher who said, "Oh, hell no, they're not going at this alone. I'm going to go in there and stick up for my guy." So I think that's important about it. And I think the more that you get to know these players and the more that you care about them, you're going to be like, well, we're all, we have this one goal, it's to win. And, I've got this guy's back and I'm going to do whatever I can to help him be better.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool that they went out and did that. And again, maybe it's just because I love the bowl, and I just remember the last time I saw them go out bowling, they won a Super Bowl. So I was like, all right, bring back those good vibes, baby. Bring back those good vibes. I do remember Tom Coughlin was a terrible bowler, and Michael Strahan said that was a good thing because he shouldn't be spending his time bowling. I remember that. Sam, thank you so much. He says, can Giants Collective speak to why so many of our draft picks did not participate in the OTAs and minicamp? Anthony, I know he's your guy. You want to take that one?
Yeah, appreciate you, Sam. I think part of it is the college football season ends so late now, right? Like Cam Scadaboo is one of the players that he's referring to. Scadaboo hasn't practiced. Scadaboo was playing some late football with Arizona State. So I just think it's a pretty quick turnaround. And sometimes those players, especially the physical ones, like Darius Alexander didn't practice either. He plays in the trenches. He gets banged up. Cam Scadaboo gets banged up. I actually do think it's funny. We had so much speculation pre-draft from fans about Abdul Carter and the multiple injuries that he had. And he's just like totally fine. He's been out there and hasn't missed a single rep, which I think is amazing. It speaks to the amount of talent that he has. But then you've got guys like Cam Scadaboo. You've got Marcus Bowe has been practicing. Darius Alexander hasn't either. But I think it's probably just some injury stuff. They're slightly banged up. The Giants haven't cared to comment on it because it's probably not significant enough for it to matter in July. And it's only OTAs. It's only mandatory minicamp. There's not a whole lot that they're doing. There's no pads on. So I just think it's a matter of why risk it. If they have some sort of a bang up, there's no need to even risk aggravating it at this stage in the offseason.
Yeah, and Daigle said they make changes to their programs every year. So I wonder if there was any type of data that they collected last year, maybe after OTAs, that kind of made them feel like, okay, anyone who's coming off an injury for OTA specifically, we're really going to ramp them up very, very slowly. And we're going to make the focus training camp and preseason. So I'm okay with that as long as they do it a smart way, which I'm assuming they have, a very specific plan for every single player, how they're going to ramp it up. But what I think is more important than the OTAs when it comes from playing time is that we see it in preseason. I think that's going to be ultimately the deciding factor as to whether or not this team starts off quickly starting week 1. So if that means, they're going to start them off slow in OTAs, that's fine. They do a lot of meetings and whatever this time of year. And for someone like a running back, like I'm just like, I'm not that worried about it. Now we all talked about Malik, like none of us are worried about the fact that he hasn't really got a ton of reps. And because there's no pads, nothing like that, I think it's more important that we see these guys get reps throughout July and August.
Chris, what do you think? You think it's just like they're just being cautious? I mean, it's nothing serious. I think all these guys are ready to train.
And thank you. Sam's always in here, always showing appreciation. So appreciate you for being here, Sam. Thank you for coming over from Anthony's channel, Fireside Giants. He's always active in here. But Like Anthony said, I think it's not necessarily a rookie thing. I think it's more so a injury thing. Not that these are serious injuries, but they're being extra cautious for guys that may be a little bit dinged up. And for the rookies, I think it's more important, if I'm being honest, for them to learn the playbook, especially this early on in the process. So I don't really put too much stock into it with guys like Cam Scattaboo not playing much in training camp. I think it's more so learning the playbook, getting to learn your role, and they're probably a little bit dinged up and they don't want to risk anything, being that, we're a month away from training camp. You want to make sure that you're good to go when it really starts to count. So I don't think it's a rookie thing, though. I think it's more so the Giants are being cautious with players that may even have the smallest of injury concerns.
Yeah, I think the same thing, Sam. I think if they're not 100%, or maybe there's a nagging injury, or, whatever the reason may be, you just don't want to take a chance of having guys tweak something and turning something small into something bigger. So you're just cautionary at this time. But, to like the panel said, I think training camp, I think that's a big one. I think they'll be in there for training camp. You want to see them with the pads on. You want to see them practicing. You want to see them in preseason. Obviously, all the reps are important. I think OTAs, minicamps, I think they all have their place. But I think, when the rubber meets the road, training camp is where you really want to get a look at these guys when there is contact, when they put the pads on, to see what they can do, to see how they, produce, because we know that's tough and there's competition. And we know it was weird to see the fight in OTAs because that doesn't normally happen. And I guarantee you're going to see one or two fights in training camp. It happens, especially if we're scrimmaging against the Jets. I'd be surprised if there isn't a little brouhaha somewhere, because it always seems like it happens when you have those scrimmages, with a couple different teams. But I wouldn't be concerned about it, Sam. If this happens, like if they're held out of training camp in July, then you might sit there and go, okay, what the hell is going on? But I wouldn't worry about it too much at this juncture in the off season. Yusef Spearman, thank you so much. Excuse me. What is the biggest priority to address this season to become a serious playoff contender? Quarterback stability, O-line improvement, or coaching consistency? I don't care who starts with that one.
Are we just talking about this year specifically? Let me read the question again. I don't know if it's this year specifically or long term. What is the biggest priority to address this season? So we're talking about just this year specifically. If we're talking about this year specifically, if I have to pick between those, if those are the three options, I think I would go with O-line improvement. Because quarterback, I think we know what we're going to get with Russ. I think he's not going to be incredible, but he's also not going to be awful. I think he's going to be solid. He's going to be a solid starter. I think that's more so a given. Like I'd be surprised if he's not at least a decent starter this year for the New York Giants. If we're just talking about this year specifically, long term, it's quarterback. It's Jackson Dart. Can he evolve into becoming that franchise quarterback that we're all hoping he can be? But if we're talking about this year, I think it's the offensive line staying healthy. Andrew Thomas needs to stay healthy, and this offensive line hopefully trends more towards being an average offensive line. Because if they are, then I think the playoff opportunity at least becomes a possibility, especially with this strong defense. So I'd go offensive line out of those three options.
It's tough. I'm going to go coaching consistency, because I think that some of the issues that we had last year were because of the coaches. One of them was because of Dable. He struggled with time management, and he struggled with disciplining players, the fact that they were undisciplined and unprepared. Like when you have players, I've talked about this so much, and I am sorry if you all know where I'm going with this, but the repeated penalties from the same players are unacceptable. And that to me falls on the coaching. If your player by week 6 still doesn't know what they're doing and is confused, that is on you. Or the player doesn't get it, so put someone else out there instead. So I think Dable really needs to improve upon that this year. He also had personnel issues last year during the Washington game with the kicker situation. So I think Dable needs to improve some of those things. And I think the same thing goes for Shane Bowen, because obviously we have all complained about Shane Bowen and what we saw out of him last year, the fact that they couldn't stop the run, that they got a total of 4 interceptions in 17 games, which is also unacceptable. So I'm expecting him to make some changes this year to really complement the fact that he has more talent this year and use it to his advantage so they can get more takeaways, so they can continue to be consistent with getting sacks week to week to week, and stopping the run has to be something that they excel at this year. And I think that if Dable improves upon those things so they're not shooting themselves in the foot when they finally get some momentum on offense, if Bowen can improve on those things so they can stop the run, put the defense in better situations. It's also going to help the offense with better field position, things like that. If those things happen, I think we could see a big difference in this football team this year.
Anthony, what do you think is the most, the biggest priority to address?
The number one thing for me is quarterback play. I guess this is particularly quarterback stability. I think if you get strong quarterback play out of Russell Wilson, you'll get stability. And I think that strong quarterback play will improve the offensive line and will improve the perception around the coaching, because I think the perfect play to look at all of that in a vacuum from last season is against the Carolina Panthers last year. You had a flea flicker play called up by Brian Dable, and it was a perfect call because 2 guys were open for touchdowns, and it resulted in a sack. So the offensive line looked bad, and so did the coaching, because it was a failed play call on a 3rd and 2, and it was a sack. And both of the reasons that happened were the quarterback. Like, it was all on the quarterback. So I think that that's just one play to look at in a vacuum, but there are so many other instances like that where the play call was right and the execution was poor, where the player was open, but the ball wasn't thrown and a sack was taken. So for me, the offensive line wasn't great last year, but was it the worst offensive line in football? I really don't think it was. I think that it had the worst quarterback room in football behind it, and that made it look even worse than it was. I still don't think it was even average. It was probably still below average, but even still, I don't think that the offensive line was as dramatically bad as people make it out to be. I think the quarterback room really held things back. And also, in terms of the coaching consistency, for the defensive side of the ball, I'll agree, because I think that Shane Bowen does need to be better. But for Brian Dable and for the offensive side of the ball, I felt oftentimes there were players open, there were good play calls, there were some creative things going on, but there was just really poor execution. Plus, that was the playbook that Brian Dable had last year. That's going to be a new playbook with a new quarterback, because there's a lot more that he can do now with this offense, now that he has a guy who's actually willing to throw the ball 20-plus yards downfield. So I think the whole thing is going to open up. I think it's the number one thing that's going to change the entire look of the New York Giants this year. As I said, Bad Dog, we always talk about this, going from way below average at the quarterback position to average, you eliminate so many different errors in your game, right? Like, if you're talking about being late on 3rd downs or taking sacks here or whatever, you're eliminating 2 of those things. That changes the entire offense, right? Just in terms of how many different factors you have holding you back from the quarterback position. So for me, biggest priority, quarterback position needs to play well. I think everything else falls into place after that.
You all chose a different thing. So let me just say this, and I'll be boring. They're all important. How about that? If I had to pick one of those 3, my dog's got the zoomies. I can hear her up there. If I had to pick, and it's tough, I mean, because but I would probably lean quarterback stability myself. We all know it's the most important position on any football team without question. And I do think that good quarterback play, or at least average quarterback play, can make the line a lot better. If the quarterback's not hanging on to the ball for an extra quarter of a second, if he reads the defense, if he gets rid of the ball, the offensive line doesn't need to block nearly as long. And Adriana's point, they're not going to commit as many penalties if they have to block as long. Brian Dable should be able to open up the playbook and be more versatile with the plays that he calls, because he has a guy that can execute these plays. You got a guy in Russell Wilson who's very cerebral, can audible the line of scrimmage, can change the blocking schemes, can get players in the right position. A lot of pre-snap reads by Russ. This is things I don't think Daniel Jones ever did well. And I think that hampered everything with the coaching and the offensive line. But don't get it twisted. It wasn't all Daniel Jones' fault. Like, they all got to improve. But I do think everything is built and predicated off a quarterback play.
100%. Yeah,
and I think that Russ is going to make everyone around him better. So I think if you get a consistent Russ and get some stability there, everything else will feed off of that.
Yeah. So I guess I just answered it differently, because I view Russ as more of a given than the offensive line.
The whole line definitely needs to improve.
But I agree.
There's no wrong answer there. It's a great
but question. I agree that Russ, the improvement in the quarterback room, if we're going to make the playoffs, is ultimately going to be the biggest factor, because the quarterback makes everything better. It makes the coach look better. It makes the offensive line look better. We all know it's the most important position in the sport. I just viewed the question more along the lines of, I know what I'm getting. At least I think I know what I'm getting with Russ. I'm getting a league average quarterback. If the offensive line could stay healthy, if Andrew Thomas could stay healthy, and they could take a step up, due in part to Russ, I think they could be a playoff team. So I think I just interpreted the question a little differently. But
No,
I
I mean, like I said,
quarterback is the most important position.
there's no wrong answer there.
There really is.
And that's why all three of you picked something different, because they're all incredibly important. I mean, there's no wrong answer. It's a great question, Yusuf. Connor says, "Love you, people." We appreciate that. We always like to hear nice. We always like to hear nice things. For 5 subscribers away from 5,000. If you love us that much, make sure you share the stream out, share the channel. Let's get to 5K, because by the time we get rolling the season, I want to be at 10K at some point during the season. So we have to double it up. So let's get her done. Matthew, I appreciate the update. He says, "Sorry I'm late. The Yankees scored."
What's going on? What's going on with New York?
They didn't score in 29 innings. It was the longest drought since
the Mets and Yankees are both playing like crap the last 4 or 5 games. What's going on?
Everybody, I did the video on Jackson Dart yesterday, and today everybody's in there. Bad Dog, when's the Yankee video come? Bad Dog, where's that? I had to do one today. I'm like, all right, 29 scoreless innings. That deserves a little rant. But I am glad they scored. It's great. Steven says, Neighbors or DK, who's the best wide receiver Russell play with? That's a good question. Who
Neighbors.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf he's a borderline great wide receiver. He's a physical specimen. I remember when he had that combine that he did, and I was stunned that he fell as far in the draft as he did. I can't remember the reason why he did, but Neighbors, no doubt in my mind. I think Neighbors is the better wide receiver than DK Metcalf. I think Neighbors is like the best receiver in the NFL. So I'm biased, but I loved him as a prospect coming out. I was drooling over him when I got to watch him play at LSU. When I was looking at the prospects who the Giants could potentially take, and after watching him in his rookie year with as Anthony just said, the worst quarterback room in the NFL, for him still to play the way that he did, I think Neighbors is. I would in a second. I think is better than DK Metcalf.
Neighbors is definitely going to have a better year this year.
Yeah.
We have to.
He's huge. I just said another hot take. I mean, I throw a lot of hot takes out here, but I say he's going to lead the league in receiving yards. That's really what I think he can do. Chris, you think he's better than Justin Jefferson? Though you think he's?
I think
he's better than Jamar Chase.
I think he's right. I think he's in that same class. Let's put it that way. He's in that league with those guys from a talent standpoint. Yes.
I hope that he is number 1 by the end of the year. That'd be great.
You mentioned the other 2 LSU guys, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. You know who has the record for most receiving yards in LSU history? It's Malik Neighbors.
And you know who else came from LSU? Oh, Odell Beckham, of course.
And Brian Thomas was pretty good last year too, as a rookie.
Do any of you guys, we're going to finish on an off note here. Do any of you think Odell Beckham, because I have said this since he left the Giants, he will come back and retire a Giant. Does anybody think he'll ever be a Giant again?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
And I'm alone in that aspect. I think he's going to be a Giant. I don't know.
There was a time where I thought it may happen. You know what it may be, Bad Dog? It may be one of those things where he retires as a Giant. When they sign with the team for like 2 days, and then but I don't think he'll ever play it down as a Giant.
No,
again.
I don't
even think he's going to play again.
No.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of agree. Yeah.
He wound up on the Dolphins, did nothing last year. I think they cut him. So yeah, I think he might be done.
Maybe. It is what it is. I guess you get a little nostalgic sometimes, and just because I for a long time, I don't want Malik Neighbors to be like Beckham, where Beckham was like that one shining star. Like Eli was really good the first couple of years Beckham was there. I think people fail to realize how good Eli was Beckham's first 2 years. Eli had career statistical seasons, his first 2 years there, Beckham's. And, but other than that, I mean, the team was really bad, and he was really what sold the tickets. And I don't want Malik Neighbors to be the guy selling the tickets with a bad team, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think
the reason why I don't think that's going to happen, Bad Dog, is because look at our pass rush, man. I know. This team is much better built than that team was. I think. And we're not done yet, but I think they're starting to be built much better than that team was.
I agree. Our guy tutto, grazie paesano, grazie. He says, massive salutes and respects to Bad Dog Tana, Big Tony, and Adriana, kings and queens of the New York Giants media and podcast. Greetings from me and my 4 young sons here in Princeton, Joycey. I'll be here only just for a week. You know, when Tuto goes to Philadelphia to watch the Giants and Eagles, they all back out of his way. You don't ever go up to a group of Italians in suits. Just stay away. And that's a tip for everybody out there. Even I don't do that. Like I go to Saratoga racetrack and I see 4, 5, 6, 8 Italian guys in suits. I just go, okay, I'm just going to go the other way. I don't know what they're doing. With that said, that brings us to the close of another edition of Giants Collective. Like I said, the next show on Friday, it's going to be our last show until training camp. If you guys like the show, again, please like it, subscribe. We're really close to 5K, which is awesome. Stream's always powered by BetUS. Go over there, check them out with that promotion of YouTube 150. Check us out on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on TikTok and Instagram. All the links are below. And again, if you want to become a member, get your name in the outro, the cool emojis, the monthly member messages, just hit the join button. It's not too much. And real quick under the gun, Tuto says, Bad Dog, please suit me up in Giants game. Make him play against Saquon. Yeah, okay. I promise he won't be able to play another game. Tuto,
I don't doubt that Tuto's like built and he's a tough guy for sure. We've seen some profile pictures of him. I don't know about all that, man. Saquon's built like a brick shithouse. I don't know, Tuto.
I trust in Tuto.
I do trust in Tuto. He's a big guy. There's no doubt about it.
I trust in Tuto. I don't agree with him about Dable or Fat Fuck Dumbo, whatever he calls, which is still my favorite. I love Tuto. How do you not love Tuto? How do you not love Tuto? He's the freaking man. He's a legend. All right. With that said, guys and girls, we're going to get out of here. For Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainer, it is your guy, the Bad Diggy Diz. We'll see you on Friday. Enjoy the rest of your hump day, and we are out. Peace.
Have a good night, guys.
Hey. I was like, where's my... Okay. No. All right, I'm just gonna end it. They don't have the outro. I'm sorry. I thought we had the outro.
No outro, guys. You got an 8 second.
No outro today. The outro video is gone. So we're just gonna end it. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you next time. We're out.